I led more than 70 undercover child rescue missions in 15 countries. The most valuable skills that we learned were not our hard skills, wasn't our combat skills, wasn't Krav Maga, hand to hand, wasn't any of those things. It was situational awareness. And 95% of the situations where somebody has to move to hard skills to be able to fight their way out of something, 95% of those could have been avoided if you were just paying attention, just being present.
We've never interviewed someone who's gone from boardroom to black ops to botanical healing retreats before. This guy's going to be amazing, right? It was funny how he like puts the alliteration in there and kind of frames your journey. And I just find like, I don't know. I know part of me is like this AI stuff. I feel like I should be fighting it. You know what I mean? Like it should be like gold, guns, and land, and I should be like building my fortress, you know, in case the machines come. And then other part of me is just so fascinated by, I'm fascinated by what it can do, the way it's changing, I believe, how we think about things, if we're using it properly, and how easy it is to develop a relationship with these things, right? Like I find myself, even though I know what they are, I'm not psychotic building, you know, I'm not trying to build an AI girlfriend for myself or anything, but like I find myself referring to it as if it was a human and and talking to it by name. And it's just a very
I named mine Kitty. I had my personal assistant for more than a decade as I was building Bridge Investment Group. Her name was Kitty, and I mean she could think faster than I could. I mean she could type faster than I could think, and so my chat, I just call her Kitty because she literally can type faster than I can think. She's on it, and she knows me really well because of the fact that I bounce a lot off of her. And so, you know, when I asked her, you know, a random question about a tree, she's like, oh, well, based on the fact that you're in this area outside of Medellin, Colombia, in this climate and everything else, chances are this is, you know, needs to have more water or whatever. I mean, it's crazy because she knows all this stuff already. And so I think we're moving into an age that is incredible. In fact, hold on 2 seconds. Let me grab this just for your audience. But I was working just today. I'm fine-tuning a few chapters in my book, Your Infinite Wealth. And the chapter I was working on today was called Barter, from Barter to Bitcoin, the currency of trust. And I follow the principle of trust all the way from, you know, way back in the time when they were bartering, all the way till they used, you know, chocolate, cacao beans, and then gold, silver, et cetera, all the way through to where we are today. It's all based on that same principle of integrity, of trust, of, you know, can I trust that the product you're giving me is of the value that I'm handing you? Can I trust that the gold that you're giving me hasn't been fabricated, you know? And so really it's trust that builds fortunes, that builds wealth. And we're living in a digital age that if we can build it correctly, we can create literally infinite wealth for everyone.
So that's a string that I want to pull. I'm going to hit you with this comment, and then I want to pull that string a little more. I have found, in like the way that I view the world, it seems like there are some fairly clear new technologies that if we actually cared about fairness in the system, at least consistency, fairness in so much as we understand what's going on and we're playing by mostly the same rules. Blockchain, the integration of AI with blockchain, like there are technologies that have been created, whether, you know, taking Bitcoin as a, you know, monetary unit or store of value out of the equation, just the simple technology of blockchain and the ability to add layers of trust that were not possible before, yet seemingly we're not moving there fast enough, or as fast as I would think we would if fairness and trust were the actual goals makes me believe that there are a lot of actors looking at this technology going, yeah, no, we kind of like how we can play all these games right now and kind of
Yeah.
hide things and move things, because as much as this technology is scary and is creating some chaos, if you kind of look past the short term, the long term seems like more trust, the ability to be more transparent, more authentic in our transactions with each other. Is that kind of way it's shaken out for you, or what might I be missing
Yeah.
there?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and you have to understand that in everything there are good actors and bad actors. The truth is this. Your audience might know of me from the Sound of Freedom movie that I was the primary investor, executive producer, and my passion to fight child trafficking. The truth is we have the technology today to take down most of the bad actors in the child trafficking space. I mean, they're listening to our cell phones whether we give them permission or not. They have the information right now. The real question is why are they not taking down these networks? And the truth is there is benefit in having dirt on people. There are systems of control throughout the. In fact, the truth is with the Epstein situation, Epstein never operated on his own. He was absolutely intelligence asset that was used for the purpose of blackmail, and it happens everywhere. The most valuable piece of information that the FBI got from the P. Diddy case wasn't information that would put P. Diddy away. It was grabbing his massive amounts of videos and audio information that he had on everybody, on all of these actors, on all of these celebrities that were there at his freak off parties. Why? So that they could use it for control, for blackmail. So sadly, yes, this massive amount of information that we're putting out there online is making it so that, hey, we can connect to grandma on a FaceTime video easier, or, our cousins can see what we're doing with our kids at Disneyland. It's super fun. But on the other end of the spectrum, there's nefarious actors who are using that information for control. And the truth is as well, the one of the biggest dangers, we can go into all of this stuff in our conversation, but one of the biggest dangers for our children is not lurking behind a black alley behind a convenience store. The biggest dangers for our children is sitting in their backpack, in their back pocket. It's the technology that they keep with them, and the fact that predators from around the world can access your children through that medium if we don't do the right things to keep them safe. And so, it's a beautiful age of expansion that we can use for just infinite progression in so many areas. And I talk about that a lot in the Infinite Wealth book. But the truth is, if used incorrectly, it can create even a more dangerous world than we were in before.
Let's just roll this into the show, because I want to ask you about the kids with cell phones. Because I have two kids, 12 and 10. This has been a debate in our house forever. When my older son turned 12, we ended up getting him a phone. Unfortunately got his younger brother a phone as well. It wasn't my first choice, but I lost that battle. And I struggle with this, like most parents, I struggle with this a lot. And we spend a lot of time talking to them. I spend a lot of time monitoring. I've set up all the stuff, but they still find ways to find crazy stuff and watch it, right? And I guess in the debate that happens a lot of times around at a basketball game, or outside the fence at a baseball game among parents, is it is nice to be able to get a hold of your kids when you need them, to know where they are when they need them. But I think everyone is also, I shouldn't say it that way. People have all different versions of what that means for bad actors, right? Can they actually access that information, or is that just kind of fear tactics? If I let them have the teen account on Instagram, am I melting their brain? Am I not? Can they hack into, the algorithm and start, feeding my kids things they shouldn't see? Like, having spent time, and I know, that the traffickers use these tools and stuff, like where should parents in everyday America who are toying with this very problem right now, there are people listening to this, parents who are like, I'm having this debate right now. What are some of the, what are the realities of how technology and phones can be used, not just from like a narrative standpoint, but actually, damage to the kids, like someone can, either corrupt them or traffic them or kidnap them, et cetera. Like, where is that line, and what can they be doing to protect themselves with this type of technology?
Hold on.
No, you're fine.
Okay. Okay. Can you hear me?
I can hear you great.
That was super crazy. My audio just went out. So, okay, we're recording again.
Yeah. So,
Um,
a long question short. There are parents listening to this who are having the very debate around cell phones right now. Outside of just the doom scrolling, TikTok is not good for your brain. Take that kind of. How do they protect their kids, and what are the real dangers to having that phone in your hand that could cause your kid physical harm or an abduction or something of that nature?
well, let me put it this way. Two things. First of all, more than 15, almost 20 years ago, I was in a course. It was a FBI Citizens Academy training. We had a CIA agent come in that was talking about technology, and he started out the presentation by saying, "Guys, by the time we're done with this class, you're going to take away the cell phones from your kids. I'm going to tell you what these guys are doing." However, it's also important to understand that children born today will spend 1/3 of their life sleeping on their mattress and 1/3 of their life in front of a screen. That's just how it is. And you cannot remove them from that environment and have them grow up to be normal in this space. And so I've always lived by the saying, teach them correct principles and have them govern themselves, right? There's value in empowering them. And we do this within the Child Liberation Foundation. We have safe houses all over. We have orphanages that we work with, and a lot of places where we go in where there are at-risk children who haven't been trafficked yet, or even ones that have. And we go in and teach them. We teach them self-defense skills. We teach them how to say no. We teach them what their privates are. I mean, how many 5-year-olds have had a conversation with their parents about where their privates are and what's not okay to show and touch? Very few. The challenge is that even with men, 1 in every 5 men at some time in our lives have been a victim of sexual abuse. Most of them were as children. A large percentage of them was under the age of 10 years old in their own homes. And so if we're going to protect our children, giving them the tools to be able to navigate this world on their own is incredibly important. In fact, people will leave the movie Sound of Freedom, and they'll say, "Oh, I want to do something. I want to help. I want to go rescue kids." Well, the worst thing you can do is go try to do undercover work in Mexico. You're going to get shot. You're probably going to get arrested if you're not shot. And I know I did 20 plus missions in Mexico on my operations. The best thing you can do is go home and hug your children. People are like, "Well, how does hugging my children, how does that fix trafficking?" And I talk about that also in the Sound of Freedom book that's out right now on Amazon. But I go through in detail things that parents can do to keep their kids safe. And yes, there are dangerous things on their cell phones today. If you're going to have your kids have access to social media, which I allowed my kids to do so, make sure that they understand the dangers of posting your schedule, posting, we're at this event and doing it in live time, or posting with any pictures that have the geotagging attached to it so you can see where they are. And more important than all of those, the entire world doesn't need access to everything they're doing. Simply make the settings change so that the only people that see them and their activities are their friends. Just make it a private account. Super simple. And then monitor who their friends are. And if you've got something that looks like it's not really a kid from their school or whatever, and it could be a plant. See, with our one of the FBI has said that one of the most serious dangers for our children today is something called sextortion. In fact, the average age is actually a 12 to 14-year-old boy who is being targeted by these predators. And what will happen is they will connect with them on a gaming platform. And then from there, on this gaming platform, they'll be chatting back and forth, gaming with your kid. And then they will convince them to move the conversation over to something private off that that platform, something like WhatsApp or whatever, or Signal. So now they move the conversation over, and they say that they're a 12, 13-year-old girl. They're not. It's a 45-year-old dude, right? And that girl sends pictures. You need a relationship with your kids where they can comfortably come to you and say, "Hey, Dad, I kind of screwed up. I was chatting with this girl on my gaming platform, and we went and started talking privately, and she sent me some pictures, and I sent her some pictures, and then she asked for videos, and now she says she's going to send them all over the school unless I send her some money, unless I meet at a certain place." There have been multiple cases of suicides of children who have been caught up in these kind of things. And beyond that, one of the operations I led in Mexico was in Cancun, and one of our perpetrators, who was bringing children as young as 7 years old, was also identifying at-risk teenage kids that were traveling alone. He would scour through the internet and go on to like Instagram, Facebook, Live, etc. And he would find ones that were posting, that were tagging Cancun that they were at. And he would look and try to find out if they came from a broken home, if they were there traveling with their parents or just with the sister. And those are the ones that he would get and tell him, "Oh, hey, I'm a guide. You can come on my boat and I'll take you and tour around, no cost to you." And he would bring these kids in, take away their passports, take away their phones, give them drugs, and then he got them. So yes, these things do happen. But the people think that, oh, how do I have to be a helicopter mom? The majority of children that are taken, that are trafficked to other places, don't come from healthy homes. They come from runaways, broken homes, a broken foster care program. So the more you can do to keep your home together, that the dangers for your kids aren't being taken down to Mexico. Your dangers are their slumber parties and your family reunions. The 92% of the children who are sexually abused as children, it's familial. It's somebody that the family knows. So you need a relationship with the kids where they can come to you and say, "Hey, Dad, I don't like it when you tell me that I have to hug Uncle Harry because he touches me weird. And he says that we need to have secrets that aren't that we have to keep from you. Or I don't like this babysitter. She says we should trust her more than you, and she's now showing us pornography. Or I don't like this friend's house because her brother is taking pictures of us when we're changing." I mean, the list goes on. But that healthy relationship with your 10-year-old, with your 12-year-old, where you're their 911, they can come to you with everything, and you have those conversations at a young age. These are your private parts. This is not okay. If anybody ever asks to see them or touch them, then that's off limits. And if anybody says that this should be a secret outside of mom and dad, you need to come to us. That's a red flag. So I know there's a lot there, but it's important to know that being a helicopter dad, being a helicopter mom isn't going to fix it. They're going to rebel. Education is important, and that healthy communication is so important.
Yeah, it seems to me that the more we restrict the kids, the more we make their worlds small and can't play outside, can't walk down the street to a friend's house. You got to text me every 15 minutes if you're not on my side. I mean, I've heard some crazy stories from people, because I interact with a ton of parents in the sports, right? And which is where, I interact with all these parents. Some of the stories that I hear from parents who seemingly in every other regard is fairly put together, regular people, and then you hear how paranoid and controlling they get with their kids, and then you see those kids and they tend to struggle the most in social situations. They're the ones who can't communicate a thought to you without snatching eye contact from their parents real quick, and it almost seems like you can go too far the other way. You could be so protective that you push them, maybe not into the arms of someone, but certainly they're going to start, well, if my mom has got me locked down or my dad's got me locked down so tightly, there must be something amazing here on the other side of this. And I get criticized sometimes because to a certain extent went the other way. It started as I just didn't want to listen to bad music, so I exposed my kids to Wu-Tang at 7. But it led to, and as much as some people laugh at that, some people think I'm crazy, it led to a lot of really honest discussions because what I said to them very early was, look, I want to listen to good music. I can't listen to top 40, teeny bopper, trap, whatever this crap is that you guys listen to. I can't do it. So I'm going to teach you what good music is. There are forms of good music, in my opinion, which do have curse words in them. So you're going to learn curse words very young. And from 8, I told my older son, from 8 years old, I said, look, you know what these are. Around me in the right situation, which would be on a ball field or a basketball court, etc. If one of these words comes out of your mouth and it's in proper context, we're good. You say it in front of your teacher and you get detention, I ain't coming to save your ass. Like, that's on you. You gotta learn. Now, what's happened is at 12 and 10, those words have no control over them, right? They're not trying to sneak that word into a conversation. They're not giggling at some of these things because, in a very small extent, I'm not trying to coordinate this versus, being trafficked or taken or something. But the idea is like, I feel like we don't expose our kids to enough today. They're not, we're so sheltered. Is that make them an easier target because they're so sheltered for these types of things? Because they just haven't experienced walking into a grocery store and being like, that guy just seems weird to me. Like, I don't know what's going on with him, but he's off. Like, I don't want any part of him. I mean, you kind of learn from those scenarios, don't you?
Absolutely. And people, when The Sound of Freedom first came out, I got a lot of interviews with people saying, hey, should I take my 14-year-old? Should I take my 12-year-old? Should I take my 10-year-old? And I said, yeah, we made it so that you can take your kids. Yes, it's a dark subject, but we're not showing anything that is, I mean, we were very tactful in how we filmed it all. But I said to all of them, I think that your kids need to see this. They need to know what's out there so that they can armor themselves. They can prepare themselves. They don't have to live in fear, but it's important for them to understand that there are people in this world who would do some very awful things to children. And so it's important to pay attention to that so we don't live in fear, but we do live in a level of confidence. And so
it's wild. I say this all the time on the show, and some people don't like it, but it's what I believe. The biggest lie of postmodern feminism is that history was over, that somehow like we had evolved, even though we just killed 40 million people in World War II or whatever the number is. And now all of a sudden, but just after that, hey, we're good. We're all evolved now. No more wars.
It's like our shit.
Yeah, it's like, no, like we're only 50. Well, now we're 70-ish years removed, 75 years. Like, there are bad people in the world. And this is one of the things that I talk to my kids about when we're walking through the airport is I'll be like, look, like most of these people are perfectly fine going out their business and can give two shits about you. However, there are a few people in this crowd, just law of pure numbers, that are bad people. And why I tell you to walk with your head up, why I tell you to just be scanning, not in a weird way, but just know who's around you. I can try to teach them some of these basic things. Is because, like, guys, there are bad people. Like, there are people that would do harm for the fun of it because they're psychotic, their brain is broken, they have some sort of mental disease because it was done to them and they just don't know how to. I mean, there's all these reasons, and I'm not a psychologist, but, I feel like, but by pretending like those people don't live near us, or, you don't have anything to worry about, or, you're too young to understand this concept. That seems like a lie that we're trying to tell ourselves as adults and is not actually reality.
Absolutely. And they did some studies with some felons who had committed some atrocities against other people, and they showed them just a video, the same video of just certain people walking across the street in the mall and whatever else, and they asked them, who would you target as your next victim? And what's crazy is almost every single one of them were identifying the same people by how they walked, how distracted they were. They've got their headphones on, they've got their phone here, they're alone, they've got low self-esteem, all of these things. You teach your kids like what you have. Teach them to walk with their head up, to pay attention to what's going on, to be there with not alone, but if they are alone, to walk a little bit faster and walk with confidence. You are making it so you are not a soft target. This is for adults too. This isn't just for kids. I led more than 70 undercover child rescue missions in 15 countries. And the most valuable skills that we learned were not our hard skills, wasn't our combat skills, wasn't Krav Maga, hand to hand, wasn't any of those things. It was situational awareness. One of my trainers was named Steve Tarani. Steve is one of the top edged weapons trainers in the world, one of the top improvised weapons trainers, and one of the top awareness trainers. He trains the CIA, the FBI, Secret Service on situational awareness. And 95% of the situations where somebody has to move to hard skills to be able to fight their way out of something, 95% of those could have been avoided if you were just paying attention, just being present. And it's more than just your conscious mind. And this is important. You touched on this earlier. Hey, if something doesn't feel right, listen to it. There was a book that I had our operators read called The Gift of Fear. And in The Gift of Fear, he talks about how our conscious mind is just this thin sliver. As we're walking in, you're focused on what you're going to be doing in the store, etc. Your subconscious mind gathers all of the information everywhere that you see. Your subconscious mind literally knows how many steps you took today. Your subconscious mind knows how many steps you took in the last 10 years combined, knows how many red lights you've stopped at. Your subconscious mind knows out of the peripheral of your vision, knows that as you were walking into a store, there was a guy with a super heavy coat on that was too heavy for the heat of the day, etc. That looked kind of weird. But your conscious mind didn't even see it. And so there's so much information that's already there that you'll be able to be sensitive to if you listen. Now, I have another book that I'm almost done with called Are You Listening? With My Hand on My Heart. Not are you listening here on my ear, but are you listening here on my heart? And I talk about how beyond just our conscious and subconscious, beyond all of that, we are literally energetically connected with everyone, everything, everywhere. And we have a divine connection to something so much farther beyond where we are. I talk about how every one of the undercover missions, we weren't following logic and protocol. We were literally being led as to where these children were, what we needed to do to keep our team safe, etc. And so when you learn how to tune in to that voice of truth and listen to it, learn how to trust it, it will keep you safe. It will guide you in areas that you never thought possible. But it's important to learn how to listen. So those are all a bunch of things all tied in together. But I'm bringing in some of the things that you talked about in, having your kids listening to their intuitions and paying attention to what's going on.
Can we dive a little deeper into this idea of kind of your resonance, your awareness? I think this is incredibly powerful, and I'm gonna give you a very trite anecdote to lead into this question. I had a guest on a few weeks ago. Geez, it was probably a few months ago. I can't remember. And very well respected guy in the fitness space. And I just asked him, like, what's one thing that someone wouldn't expect you to recommend, but you actually think has helped you with your fitness and your energy and all that kind of stuff. And he said, and take this for what it is, but he said, I put PMF blocking stickers on all my electronic devices. And he uses Bodywell. There's other brands. It doesn't really matter. That's what he recommended. Okay. So being one to always be willing to test, right? I do all my research. Research comes back. Basically, there's no corresponding studies, blah, blah, blah. We can't test it. There's been individual results, but nothing peer reviewed. And, essentially at the end of the day, the long and short is most resources would tell you this is nonsense. Okay. All fair. Don't care. Try it anyways. It's a couple $100. Put them on all my devices. And I can tell you it's been 3 weeks now. I feel a little more focused. I feel less frazzled during the day. It could be complete and utter placebo. I don't think so. Just based on kind of how I'm around my devices and stuff. And my point of this is, I don't think we realize in modern society how limited our awareness is moment to moment. Like, we're so distracted, everything from radiation hitting our brain to just literally the amount of stuff we're putting in front of our face, the amount of thoughts racing through our brain. Our awareness seems very small today. It doesn't seem like it seems like common sense. It seems like just a second nature to when I was growing up. You just kind of knew what was going on. You're watching the halls in high school. If you know, whatever you were doing, you were kind of always aware of what was up. And today that just doesn't seem like something people even consider. How do you reclaim that? So if you're sitting here and you're feeling maybe like me, just like your awareness is small, like you are frazzled all the time. How, and I know you're working on the book, how do you start to pull that awareness back in? How do you start to recalibrate that resonance so you can connect and be more aware of what's going on in your surroundings?
At our retreats, and our retreats started out as healing retreats for my operators who had PTSD already in Afghanistan, and and now they're here rescuing kids, and they see a menu with children's faces, and it just kills them, And so we started our retreats in helping people overcome anxiety, depression, PTSD, addictions, childhood trauma, and we've continued them for the last 10 plus years. And one of the things that I spend a lot of time in, I teach a lot of different types of meditation. And a lot of people in Western culture and Christian culture think that meditation is an Eastern philosophy type of a thing. It's different. I do prayer and not meditate. Well, here's the thing. I'm Christian as well. Prayer for me for many, many years was very much praise, 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 sorry, 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 fix, fix, fix. That's all it was, right? Can you imagine having a healthy conversation where all of it is a one-sided conversation where it's, oh, babe, hey, you're so beautiful. Praise, praise, praise. Sorry, sorry, sorry. I crashed the car. Sorry. Hey, when you come home, can you clean up the dishes? Sorry, fix, fix. And then hang up the phone. Boom. And that's not a healthy conversation. That's not a healthy relationship. And so meditation is simply learning how to get out of your head space and into your heart. And so I teach a lot of different techniques in the meditation space, and Liberating Humanity has some of those on there as well. But it started in my early 20s, and I truly believe that most of the success of my finance companies and my anxiety and depression companies, and even what we did in the undercover missions, came from my understanding of this principle of being able to just tune everything else out and tune in to that voice of truth. I met a guy in my early 20s. His name was Jerry Prine, and Jerry had never graduated from elementary school. He couldn't read or write, not even a third grade education. But he was tested at the University of Utah as the highest IQ they ever tested at the time, one of the highest in the world. And he was the inventor of a whole bunch of life-saving medical devices. The original software that we sit and talk to our phone, Siri and voice recognition software, the original software, he created it for that the IBM started using in the beginning. He created it. He couldn't read or write. And he created it because he wanted a way to be able to talk and have it type out for things to happen. Well, I sat down with him at lunch. This was 35 years ago. Sadly, he passed away in the last decade. But about 35 years ago, I went to lunch with him, and he said, Paul, he said, you could have an IQ over 200 if you wanted. And I said, well, I'm really not that smart. I worked really hard for my grades. I didn't even get a scholarship. I said, I don't think you can change your IQ. That's something you're kind of born with. He goes, no. He said, you can. He said, the difference between me and you is that I listen better than you. I said, you listen better than me? I touched my ear. He said, no, I listen better than you. And he touched his heart. He said, do you think that I'm the inventor of those medical devices? I said, you have the patents, right? He goes, yeah, I do. I said, you're not the inventor? He goes, no, I'm not. I said, what, you stole them? He goes, well, kind of. He said, how long do you think the universe has been around? I said, millions of years. He said, billions upon billions of years. He said, those medical devices were invented billions of years ago. I was a better listener than you. He said, countless works of art, musical pieces were written, no perfect the first time, because they were already written, and those composers were able to tune into that energy. He said, when you get good at listening, You'll be able to sense the energy of everything around you, recognizing that every one of us are connected heart to heart. We're all more than just brothers and sisters. We're part of this universal whole. He says, and when you learn how to tune into that, it will guide your life in so many ways. The successes I found in my companies came from me learning to get out of my head into my heart, and in that still small space of truth, of silence, be able to receive divine guidance for me personally in my life that would save me years of going down the wrong road. And so, and this happened every single time. When I was in Haiti, Haiti is Port-au-Prince, Haiti is the most dangerous city on the planet. And I did 12 undercover missions in Port-au-Prince area. One of them was a brand new team. These guys had never worked with me before. By this time, I had done 30 plus missions in 10 plus countries. And one of the Homeland Security agents said, "Hey, Paul, can you go out with this team? They've been on the ground for 5 days. They haven't found anything yet. You're the best I have. Can you go out with them?" So I knew that meant I get no sleep. I go out, and it was like 2 a.m. We hadn't found any connections with any traffickers. And I said, "Guys, can I take lead? Are you good with that?" They said, yeah. They said, "You're really good at this. I want to see what you do." I said, "Okay, you need to follow exactly what I say." I said, "Now, first things first, this isn't a religious conversation, but first things first, I need you to understand that I believe in God." I said, "Most people believe in a supreme being. Some people call him the universe or all our Heavenly Father, or whatever." I said, "It doesn't matter. God exists and cares more about these children than you and I ever could, and knows exactly where they are. So if you're okay with it, or even if you're not, I'm going to start out by asking for some help." So I don't start with some flowery prayer. I literally get out of my head into my heart, ask for divine guidance. And then I said, "Guys, now I need you to understand how I see fear and faith." Most people think that faith is going to church and asking God to fix things in their life that they don't believe are going to be fixed. That's not faith. That's blind hope. Faith is next to unconditional love. It's the most powerful law in the universe. And it's simply this. It's the unwavering conviction that what I want to have happen will happen. And in that unwavering conviction, you literally tap into the forces of everything and bring that all into play. I said, it's hard for a lot of people to have unwavering conviction about anything. Should I marry this woman? Should I start this new job? Should I move to this new city? It's because they don't know if what they want is in line with what God wants. For me, in this space, I told these guys, I don't care if you think that God is a man or a woman or a cloud or a star or a person, doesn't matter. There's not a virtuous creator of the universe that's okay with an 8-year-old being raped, period. So it's easy for me to have unwavering conviction that we're going to find these kids. And so they're like, "Okay, dude, whatever," right? So I says, "Okay, just drive. And I'm just listening. I'm just tuning in. And I said, "Okay, stop right there." He said, "What?" He says, that black alley with the motorcycle gang. I said, "Yeah, right there. You need to stop right there." He said, "What are you going to do?" I said, "That guy knows something. I need to talk to him." And this special forces guy, he's like, "Paul," he said, this is a really dangerous area. We need to survey the area first." I said, "No," I said, "we don't have time for that." I said, "That guy's going to be gone." I said, "I can feel it. In fact, you guys are going to intimidate him. So stay here in the van. I'm going to go talk to him myself." And he's like, "Paul, are you stupid?" I said, "Listen," I said, "I'll buy you pink panties when we get home. I don't have 2 weeks to find out who's selling kids. That guy knows something." I get out of the van, walk up to him. This guy immediately pulls up his shirt, and there's a gun that's tucked into his shorts. And I'm just tuning in. I just listen. I pull out a bill out of my pocket. I don't remember if it was a 20. I think it was even a $100 bill. I hand it to him. He said, "What's that for?" I said, "That's for you. You keep it." I said, "I got another one for you if you can help me with something." I told him what I was looking for. He connected me with somebody. We ended up taking down the largest child trafficking ring in the Caribbean, which ended up taking down 4 corrupt federal judges as part of it, because of the connections I got through listening that night. So it's everything is connected. Yes, there's energy in everything. Yes, there's energy that is distracting in these with our 5G and everything else that's going around. To really get deep into that space of deep meditation, I get away from the cities. I get to a place where I don't have my cell phone. I don't have anything. I'm literally at our sanctuary in Latin America. I can tune in so purely because I don't have all that other crap that's going on everywhere. So I know there's a lot there. I just kind of
No,
ran with
no, I
that
love it.
one.
I love it. And I was having a discussion, not necessarily obviously about the depth of what you're talking about, but I was talking essentially about God and the interconnectedness of everything. And this person was an atheist and said, "Well, I don't believe that." And I said, "Well, if you're an atheist, then that means you're truth driven and science oriented. And just look at quantum physics. Look at everything they're finding. Everything that I read, and I'm not a quantum physicist by any stretch of the imagination, but I was a math major, so I understand at least parts of it. It only proves to me everything that you just said, right? Like how, they're talking about, you can, you know, knock a leaf off a tree here and it makes someone cough in Russia, right? Okay, sure. So we're going to say that everything's connected through this quantum energy, et cetera, but that there isn't a higher power that is essentially what made that possible. Like, you know what I mean? Like to me, these, like you can't get away from what you're saying, right? There's no counter argument to it, because the deeper we go into science, the more it explains exactly what you're feeling in this connectedness. Okay. So I think a lot of people who may go to the beach, right? Why do you feel so great on the beach? It's not just because of the ocean or you're not at work. You're grounded. You're separated from probably a big technology. Maybe your phone's there, but for the most part, you're detached. You have the rhythm of the earth, with the waves coming back and forth, right? Your energy, you're grounded, all these kind of things. And then all of a sudden, shockingly, your mind kind of opens up. You're smiling a little more. You're having deeper thoughts. You're feeling more in love with the person that you're there with. And you're like, oh my God, it's because I'm not at work. And it's like, no, it's not because you're not at work. You could feel this way at work, right? But it's because you have allowed yourself to detach from all of this distraction. So, okay, so someone who's listening to you going, I don't know that I'll ever be driving around Port-au-Prince looking for trafficked children, but I
Don't
would
do that.
love to be, in my own way, to be able to tap into this listening more. And I know you're writing the book right now, but
Mhm.
what are some things that say, just someone who's just getting in, they're listening to and going, you know what, I've heard some similar things, but man, if this works for Paul, I want to start to build this into my life. How would you start them down that path to listen with their heart?
I think everything starts with just trusting a little bit and then building upon that trust line upon line. So, when I was building my investment fund, if because I was living by this principle as often as I could, if I felt some intuition, if all of a sudden somebody came to mind that said, "Hey, you need to text, Mr. Marriott right now." I It wouldn't matter if it was 7:30 a.m. and my conscious mind was like, "Oh no, it might be too early for him, whatever." No, I just did it. I just did it. As soon as something came to mind of, because I don't know if that might have been the perfect moment. There's a million things that are out there that are outside of my conscious understanding. And so just just trusting when it comes up, when something comes that says, "Hey, you should just call your son right now." And I remember when I was 14 years old, and I was at a party. There was nothing, no information whatsoever that my father had that this was any different than any other place I had ever been. But he called me and he said, "Paul," he said, I need you to come home right now. He said, "I know this is, it's just out of the blue, but I just need you to come home right now." He said, "I'll come and pick you up. Are you good with me come pick you up right now?" And I'm like, "What, Dad? We're just here with some friends." He goes, "No, I need you to come home now." And that party, some really bad things ended up happening less than 2 hours after I left. My father he was just listening. And so, especially when it comes to our kids, you have to ask yourself, is this coming from a place of fear, or am I truly receiving some information that I need to follow up with? And if it's coming with a place of just negative fear-based energy, it might be the wrong source. But the spirit of truth speaks in peace, speaks in love. And as we tune into that energy, in my meditations, I teach people how way back in the time where we had the analog radios, where we had to turn the knob just right to be able to receive all of those, your favorite radio stations were already in the ether. It was already all around you all the time, but you couldn't hear any of them. You had to just tune that knob just right. And as soon as you tune that knob just right, then boom, all of a sudden you could hear it perfectly. Well, the same thing goes with our ability to receive. Now, I'm going to go down a rabbit hole for 30 seconds here. There's scientifically, inside of our brain, right between our two hemispheres, there's a little teeny opening. And in the middle of that opening, there's a little gland. It's called a pineal gland. Inside of that pineal gland are little teeny microscopic crystals. Okay, so back at the time where we had radios, analog radios, what is it that picked up the signal? It was little crystals that they had in the radio. That's what it was, right? They're very susceptible to this information. Our bodies were created as receivers of information in this energetic realm. But based on some of the foods we eat, the things in our water, things like that, sometimes those things get calcified. The little teeny crystals that are in there. You guys have heard of Joe Dispenza. I did a whole week training with Joe with our team last year, and he has one part of his meditation where he has you squeeze your perineum, down in your base area all the way up. You're pushing this fluid up your spinal column, because the very, very top of it ends up in that little opening where your that pineal gland is. And by pushing it up, you're creating a wave and breaking it up. There are things that you can do to also, like cacao, chocolate. Pure cacao can decalcify your pineal gland, and so can tamarind juice. And there's a bunch of other things. But I'm just saying that from a scientific standpoint, because our bodies have the ability to pick up signals, very faint signals from everyone around us. From this is how telepathic communication. I'm working with I have a good friend named Caroline Corey. Caroline did a movie. She's a producer. Did a movie called Superhuman, and in that movie, she scientifically proves things beyond our five senses. She interviews government agents who are trained on remote viewing.
Yeah.
She has schools where children were riding bikes with eye masks on and playing ping pong. She's now doing Superhuman 2 that's coming out very, very soon, that we're helping her, kind of put the final touches on. But in that one, there's people who doesn't even have optic nerves, who are completely blind, that through tuning into that energy can literally sense everything around them and see in their own way, without the way that we see, but they can sense everything in the room as they're walking through it. So yeah, super cool stuff.
The pineal gland stuff is something that I haven't researched enough, but at face value in my understanding, and I went down the rabbit hole a little bit because I wanted to learn more about remote viewing, because some of the accuracy numbers they didn't seem right if they're just guessing, right? It didn't seem, just, again, math mind, like just looking at their success rates. And for those of you listening might not know what remote viewing is, these are different programs. There are a few of them that have been run through various government agencies, where essentially individuals with my brain wants to say psychiatric, but that's not the word.
Well, I just put it this way: the veil between the physical world and the spiritual world is thin for them. They have special spiritual gifts, psychic gifts, that allow them to see things that are outside of where they are. And there are certain, we call them mediums. There are certain mediums who have these gifts that if they called some of the FBI and CIA agents that I've worked with, they said that if these guys called on especially a child-related case, they would follow up immediately. And a lot of these a lot of them are gals, but they would say, okay, I see there's this case here. I see a red door. I see a street sign that says this and whatever. And boom, they would follow up, and they would, a completely cold case, be able to open it back up and solve it. Yeah. Which is incredible. So, if we believe in a life hereafter, we believe in a God, we believe in the spiritual world, we have to understand that there are people who have gifts where the veil is thinner, and each one of us can peer into that realm. Each one of us can access it for our own good, for the safety of our children, for the direction in our companies, everything. We have access to something so much farther beyond what we can find on our internet, on our books, on our conversations with others.
Completely agree. And guys, if you're skeptical about this, just go down this rabbit hole a little ways. Just the stats on, and here's one thing I found interesting. Women remote viewers, female remote viewers, tend to see emotional related things like a distressed child, where male remote viewers see physical objects better. Like there are a series of, and I'm going to forget their names, so I'm not even going to say them, but you'll find them very easily, of famous remote viewers who found downed planes in lost remote areas within hundreds of feet of where they said that it would be. And this is, guys, we're looking at like 40 to 50% accuracy rates on these things. And for thinking about what they're doing, if you can be, and a lot of times the issue is not so much that they're not seeing something, they just don't have enough information to pinpoint a location. So there could even be more accuracy, but there's obviously the messages don't always come in the same. But this is 100% a real documented thing. The FBI and CIA at a minimum have rolled out these programs over and over and over again over multiple decades, and they just wouldn't waste resources on these things if they weren't real. There's actually a movie that kind of pokes fun at it, which is The Men Who Stare at Goats. Right, so they're kind of taking a run at the topic, but it's based off of real programs that existed. Have you ever read the Untethered Soul by Michael Singer?
No, you know what? Somebody suggested that recently. I would open that one back up.
I would take a look at that. And he's got a couple, but essentially this book for me, it's only 100 pages. It's super quick read, but wonderful author. The idea here is essentially we are not our bodies and we are not our minds. We are our souls, and that our bodies and our minds are giving us data points, and we have to be very careful with confusing us, our spirit, who we are, Paul, Ryan, with the voices or the signals that we're getting from our body and our mind. And he does it in a much more articulate way. But what it showed me and kind of gave me another resource behind my belief, which is essentially what you said with these crystals, is how do we know that those crystals aren't what are capturing the vibration of our soul and are actually what are putting us in this body? Like, why would these mechanisms be there? And I'm not trying to go too far down. For some people, this is conspiracy theory and tinfoil hat stuff. For me, it's the real world. But like, why would those structures exist in our body if they were just for what, like catching certain tuning and a little bit of balance? Like there's these crystalline structures that mirror the exact way that we used to build those little radio kits 30 years ago when we were kids. It seems like more of a leap to me to think that they aren't used for these purposes than to today in 2026 with everything we've seen and all the documentation that's been released and how much effort and energy government organizations and corporations have put into these types of topics for there to be nothing there. So I can see being skeptical. I can see maybe to varying degrees not wanting to think about these things, but I think to operate as if they are completely untrue and we are just these meat pockets that walk around that evolved from single cell organisms is absolutely bananas. And I think it doesn't lead to the life that you ultimately want, right? The love and the fulfillment, the mission, the passion, the purpose. These are vibrational energies. These aren't things that just happen because you decided they did. Does that make sense what I'm saying to you?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And on that note, when I teach deep meditation techniques at our retreats, that is our healing retreats, I hammer in the importance of what I call setting sacred space. Now, let me just preface it this way. As we talked about earlier, you're walking through the airport with your kids. There's most of the people there are good, but there are people there who would do your children harm. The same thing goes in the spiritual realm. Whether you subscribe to the idea that 1/3 of the hosts of heaven fell and followed the adversary, whether it's 1/3, whether it's half, whether it's 5%, it doesn't matter. There are intelligences, angel spirits in the spiritual realm who have our best interest in mind. Your grandmother on the other side, she loves you. She wants to help you in whatever way. There are energies, there are spirits that don't. And so and I'll use this example. I've worked with some mediums. Remember, we were talking about the people who can do remote viewing or whatever. I've worked with a lot of them and trying to understand really where their gifts were, not only in finding the kids, but in other things beyond that. And there are some that do not set that sacred space a lot because they don't understand it. I had a guy who he was like, okay, let me just show you how gifted I am. I'm going to tell you what happened when you were 5 years old. I'm going to tell you what your grandpa used to say to you. I'm going to tell you what your dad used to do, whatever, right? Okay. Now, he was accurate on all of those things. However, it's important to understand that Satan knows what you did at 5 years old. Satan knows what your dad said to you. Satan knows what your grandpa said to you. All of those things. This is if the adversary, Satan, as you might call it, it wasn't the great fornicator, wasn't the great murderer. He was the great deceiver. And so as we're going into the spiritual realm, it is super important that we protect ourselves against deception. And so our words are very powerful. And I do something very simple as I drop in, as I'm teaching people how to drop in out of their head into their heart space, I have them say the words. I ask and intend to create a sacred space protected by divine protection, wherein only information that is in line with my highest and best good may enter. And the highest and best good for all, right? So I'm going to frame it where only truth comes in, where only information that's for my highest and best good comes in, because otherwise you can learn techniques to thin that veil, and now you can get some inspiration that you can go do something stupid, right? You can get deceived. And so it's a powerful tool that can guide you in everything that you want in your life as you start learning how to tune into that space. But I set the sacred space, focus on the breath, move from the head to the heart. And a lot of times, when I was in Ecuador, one of the undercover missions that we led in Ecuador, and the federal agent had some intel on an operation that it had a fake front where they had like a spa type of a thing, but there was a fake front type thing. And we drove up to it and he goes, "Oh, damn." I said, "What?" He says, "Oh, it's closed down. It's gone. It's closed. They must have got the tip. I got this tip a month ago and it's gone." And I said, "No, stop." He said, "Stop." I said, "No, stop. I can feel it. They're still here." He says, "This is a waste of time." I said, "No, stop." So he stops the van. Boom. I get out, pull my Green Beret friend, a couple other operators get out. I go back behind the van, and all I do is close my eyes, focus on my heart, take a deep breath in through my nose, deep breath, hold it for a second, focus on my heart, out through my mouth. That one little action all by itself can take you, by focusing on your breath, focusing on your heart, boom, it takes you out of your head, you focus on your heart space, and then just act. Just act. And I could feel it. It told me, just walk right over there. There's a restaurant a couple doors down. I walk into the restaurant, walk straight up to the manager. I said, "Hey, there's supposed to be there's a spa here, and there's a massage place that had special massages. Do you know where it's supposed to be?" And he says, "Do you have an appointment?" Freaking, I knew that place was still there, right? I said, "No." He goes, "Oh, I don't want to talk about it." So boom, I went out in front again, one more time, closed my eyes, deep breath in through my nose, held it for a second, focused on my heart, out through my mouth, opened my eyes, and just filling into my heart, looked. There was a lady that was in the crowd of all the people. There was one lady walking her dog. I felt it. There was a little just touch right here in my heart. Walk up to her. I said, "Hey, I wonder if you can help me with something. I've got an appointment." Sometimes you lie when you're undercover. "I've got an appointment with a massage place that's supposed to be here, a special one, and she looks me up and down, and I look like a thug. I've got a big old freaking chain on. I've got a hat that says the F word upside down on it. I got, and she said, she picks up her phone, makes a quick phone calls, and sure enough, this madam comes, opens up these two steel doors and takes us in. So I won't tell you all the details of it, but we took down a very large operation there because of just tuning in. And that we can do that every day. We can literally just in 5 seconds of our time, close our eyes, focus on our heart, deep breath in through the nose, hold it for a second, out through the mouth, and just listen. Just listen.
I could talk to you all day about this stuff. You got the podcast, Liberating Humanity. We have, obviously, Sound of Freedom book is out, but we have Creating Infinite Wealth is coming. And then what is Your Infinite Wealth, sorry, Your Infinite Wealth. And then what is, you said you're working on a book, a working title. When are you thinking?
Yeah.
Because we talked a lot about that subject here.
I'm 14 chapters in. I think I'm going to finish it at 20 chapters. It's called Are You Listening? And I literally, the intro of the book starts with stop. I mean, stop, and that story of him, and I talk about Jerry Prine in there, and I go deep into everybody from Tesla to Einstein to others who are able to tap into that spirit of truth, and then teach people different techniques and breathing. I mean, even in Your Infinite Wealth, with the golden age of conscious capitalism, chapter 4 is on meditation. And people say, well, how does meditation tie into creating wealth? Now, everything. It can save you years of time with the wrong partner, with the wrong direction, by learning just how to tune into that divine guidance.
I hope you guys listen. I know that this episode wasn't like straight business or anything, and obviously we do this all the time with guests, but I think that what you are sharing, this is like all the chaos of our modern society. This is the unlock. This is the other side of the coin, in my opinion. Like the anxiety, the stress, the tension, that low hum of just frustration that so many people are living with. And we try to escape by, drugs, alcohol, some sort of vice, whatever dopamine hit we can. The solution is slowing down and listening. That's the solution. And it's not easy, because I feel like so much of this isn't, like, you were looked at as a weirdo in a lot of friend circles and a lot of familial circles. If you go down this path and and it doesn't have to be some crazy woo-woo practice or whatever, but you just slow down, like you said, put your hand on your heart. Your version of this, a lot of people are going to look at you like, oh, he's gone off the rails, or she's into something weird. Guys, find this for you. Find your version of this that works for you. But this is the unlock. And I know from my own life, and the times when I felt the most at peace is when I am practicing. I have my practice with God, and I am finding space for quiet. And in the times where I feel the most frustration, it's go, things in my ears all the time, all constantly on my computers. And you'd think by now at 45, I would listen. I would listen more often. But I just appreciate the hell out of you work you do. I know you probably hear that all the time, but you've changed the world, my friend. And it is just such an honor. Where is the best place for people to follow along on your journey as the books come out, as you continue? I know you have more coming from the podcast and different stuff. So how do they get in your world so they know what's up and what you have coming down the pipe?
Most social media profiles is just Liberating Humanity on Instagram, on Facebook, and others. LinkedIn is just my name, Paul Hutchinson, but everything else is Liberating Humanity. And you can go to liberatinghumanity.com. And get links to different podcasts. You'll get a link to this one as well. I like to promote everybody that I've been on with, and so we're compiling all of those together into one place. And if somebody wants to get involved directly with the foundation, it's the Child Liberation Foundation. You go to childliberation.org, and directly you can get involved there. You can donate $20 a month to help save kids. And see all of the things that we're doing. With the 10 years that I led undercover child rescue missions in 15 countries, we rescued more than 7,000 children that are back with their families. However, today, under the leadership of my wife, the Child Liberation Foundation is helping more than 10,000 children a month in preventing them from being trafficked. We have teams on the ground that we funded that are identifying trafficking in high-risk situations across borders. We have certification programs. Because I've been in the darkness and I know what it looks like, and I know how to identify it. We have certification programs for people who work in hospitals and hotels and law enforcement, et cetera. We took down one of the largest child trafficking rings between Ecuador and Peru because the doctors knew what to look for. Sent my wife in, she interviewed some of the kids, sure enough, got all this intel. We took down this entire trafficking ring because people were watching and knew what to look for. And so, and I will say there's a lot of information in the Sound of Freedom book on what to do to keep your kids safe. The whole first section is called The Making of an Undercover Operator, the first 4 or 5 chapters. But in doing so, it's not only every single chapter is full with tidbits of things that you can do to learn to keep your kids safe, to keep you safe, et cetera. And everything from situational awareness to Krav Maga, et cetera, all the way through. But then we go through some of the rescues in the jungle, the rescues on the island. At the end, it's all about liberating humanity. What does it look like? Are we going to fix this problem by pulling children out of hell forever? No. We're going to fix it by pulling the hell out of the adults, by pulling hell out of humanity. That's what we have to do. We all have to learn how to heal. I'll end with one little quick anecdote. I love this story. This man is sitting on his couch, and he has his little boy comes in and says, Daddy, I want to play baseball. And Dad's like, I'm busy right now, and goes outside. He's reading his newspaper. And the little boy comes back a little bit later. He goes, Daddy, it's a beautiful day outside. Please, can we play baseball? And the dad turns the page of the newspaper, and he sees this advertisement that's got a map of the world on it. And he has this idea. And he tears out the map, tears it up in a little piece of the paper, and he throws it on the floor. He says, Son, you need to learn your geography. You go get some tape together every single piece, every single country where it goes, every state, every island, everything you put it all together into one world. If you can do that, I'll go play baseball with you. He thinks it's going to take an hour or longer. The little boy comes back in 5 minutes, and it's perfect. And the dad says, how did you do that? And the little boy said, well, there was a picture of a man on the other side. I just put the man together, and the whole world came together. Guys, that's the answer. That's how we liberate the children, is we look at the man in the mirror. We have to ask ourselves, what do I need to do to show up differently? What do I need to do to heal my anger issues, my self-esteem issues, my anxiety, my depression, my addictions? What do I need to do to release that trauma? All of that stuff you can find on liberatinghumanity.com. And because if we can do that, we help the adults heal, we save millions of children. So, Ryan, thank you so much for having me on with your audience today. I'm incredibly, incredibly grateful.
I appreciate you. God bless, my friend.
Super grateful.
How was that?
Beautiful.
Good.
Got it done. Thank you.
Good. No, that was awesome. I mean, honestly, I could talk to you all day about this stuff. It's never been my career, but I am ferocious with understanding all of this. And it's funny. I get into these arguments. My mother is here. I'm gonna hit stop. My mother is a saint.